The silence in the arena was deafening as Jacob Fatu lay motionless on the cold concrete floor backstage at SmackDown, and what happened next would shake the entire wrestling world to its core. Before we dive into this explosive revelation that has everyone talking, make sure you hit that subscribe button because you won't want to miss what comes next in this unfolding saga. Aldis stood before the cameras with a look of grim determination etched across his face, and when he opened his mouth to speak, the words that came out sent shockwaves through every corner of the WWE universe. The SmackDown general manager had spent hours reviewing security footage, conducting interviews, and piecing together the puzzle of who would dare lay hands on one of the most dangerous members of the bloodline. Jacob Fatu had been found unconscious in a restricted area of the arena, his massive frame crumpled against storage crates, and the attack had been so swift and brutal that even the cameras had barely caught the perpetrator in action. Aldis revealed that after extensive investigation, the culprit was none other than a rising star who had been harboring resentment for weeks, someone who felt overlooked and disrespected by the bloodline's dominance over the blue brand. The attacker's identity sent the wrestling community into absolute chaos because nobody saw this coming from a mile away. Aldis pulled up the grainy security footage on the massive screen behind him, and frame by frame, the story unfolded like a thriller movie that kept getting more intense with each passing second. The footage showed Jacob Fatu walking through the backstage area with his usual confident swagger, completely unaware that danger lurked in the shadows just feet away from where he strutted. Then, like a viper striking its prey, the attacker emerged from behind the equipment truck with a steel chair gripped tightly in both hands. The first shot connected with Fatu's shoulder, causing the Samoan werewolf to stumble forward in surprise and pain. Before he could turn around to face his assailant, a second chair shot crashed against the back of his skull with such force that the sound echoed through the empty hallway like a gunshot in the night. What made this attack even more shocking was the methodical nature of it all, because this wasn't some heat-of-the-moment decision or a spontaneous outburst of violence. The attacker had clearly planned every single detail down to the exact location where they knew Fatu would be walking alone, away from his bloodline brothers who might have been able to protect him or at least witness what was happening. Aldis explained that the perpetrator had studied Fatu's routines for weeks, learning his patterns and movements throughout the arena until they found the perfect opportunity to strike. The general manager's voice grew more intense as he described how the attacker didn't stop after those two chair shots but continued the assault with kicks and stomps while Fatu tried desperately to protect himself on the ground. Medical personnel who arrived on the scene minutes later found Fatu dazed and bleeding from a gash above his eyebrow, his ribs bruised from the repeated strikes, and his pride wounded perhaps even more than his body. The motive behind this vicious assault became crystal clear when Aldis revealed the attacker's own words from their interrogation in his office. The perpetrator had been passed over for opportunities time and time again while the bloodline seemed to get whatever they wanted whenever they wanted it. Title shots were handed to them like party favors, main event spots were practically reserved in their names, and anyone who dared to challenge their authority found themselves on the receiving end of brutal beatdowns. This particular superstar had reached their breaking point after being pulled from a #1 contender match at the last minute to make room for yet another bloodline storyline. The frustration had been building like pressure in a volcano ready to erupt, and when the opportunity presented itself to send a message that couldn't be ignored, they took it without hesitation or remorse. Social media absolutely exploded the moment Aldis made his announcement, with fans divided down the middle about whether the attacker was justified in their actions or had crossed a line that should never be crossed. Some argued that the bloodline had been running roughshod over SmackDown for far too long and someone needed to stand up and fight back against their reign of terror. Others insisted that attacking someone from behind with a weapon was cowardly and dishonorable, regardless of the circumstances or grievances involved. The hashtag started trending within minutes, with passionate debates raging across every platform imaginable. Wrestling journalists scrambled to get statements from anyone remotely connected to the situation, calling up former WWE superstars for their take on the controversy, reaching out to industry insiders for behind-the-scenes information, and analyzing every possible angle of this developing story. The Bloodline's response was swift and terrifying in its intensity because you don't attack one member of the family without bringing the wrath of the entire faction down upon your head. Roman Reigns issued a statement through Paul Heyman that was dripping with menace and promised retribution beyond anything the attacker could possibly imagine. Solo Sikoa was caught on camera backstage punching a locker so hard that he dented the metal door, his eyes blazing with fury at the assault on his cousin. Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa were seen stalking the corridors looking for the perpetrator like predators hunting wounded prey. The entire arena felt like a powder keg ready to explode at any moment, with security personnel on high alert and everyone walking on eggshells wondering when and where the bloodline would strike back. Aldis found himself in an impossible position as general manager because he had to maintain order while also allowing the natural consequences of this attack to play out in front of the WWE Universe. He couldn't simply suspend the attacker indefinitely because that would deprive fans of the compelling television that was about to unfold from this situation. At the same time, he couldn't just let the bloodline run wild seeking vigilante justice without any rules or restrictions whatsoever. The solution he proposed during his announcement was both controversial and brilliant in its simplicity. He scheduled a match for the following week's SmackDown where Jacob Fatu would get his opportunity for revenge in a sanctioned environment where hopefully things wouldn't spiral completely out of control. The stipulation he added made everyone's jaw drop because if the attacker could somehow defeat Fatu in this match, they would earn a shot at whichever championship the Bloodline currently held that they wanted most. The week leading up to that match was pure chaos from start to finish, with both competitors cutting promos that raised the temperature in the building to scorching levels. The attacker stood in the ring with a microphone and laid out their entire case against the Bloodline, detailing every slight and every injustice they had endured while watching that faction receive preferential treatment. They spoke about watching friends and colleagues get destroyed simply for being in the wrong place at the wrong time when the Bloodline decided to make a statement. They talked about the younger talent who were afraid to even compete on SmackDown because they knew that crossing paths with Reigns and his family could end their careers before they really began. The attacker's words resonated with a significant portion of the audience who had grown tired of the Bloodline's dominance and wanted to see someone genuinely challenge their authority. Jacob Fatu's response was delivered with the calm confidence of a man who knows he holds all the cards and all the power in any given situation. He didn't need to raise his voice or make elaborate threats because his reputation spoke volumes about what he was capable of doing to anyone foolish enough to get on his bad side. Fatu promised that the match would be less about wrestling and more about making an example out of someone who thought they could sneak attack a member of the Bloodline and walk away without consequences. He vowed to inflict the kind of damage that would serve as a warning to everyone else in the locker room that certain lines should never be crossed under any circumstances. The intensity in his eyes left no doubt that he meant every single word coming out of his mouth. When the night of the match finally arrived, the atmosphere inside the arena was electric with anticipation because everyone knew they were about to witness something special and potentially dangerous. Aldis made his way to the ring before the competitors entered and laid down additional ground rules to try to maintain some semblance of control over what was about to happen. He stationed extra security around ringside, banned the Bloodline members from the building to prevent interference, and made it clear that if things got too out of hand he would not hesitate to call off the match and hand out serious consequences. The crowd was split right down the middle with dueling chants echoing throughout the venue, some cheering for Fatu to destroy the person who attacked him from behind, others hoping the underdog could pull off the upset victory and earn their rightful opportunity. The match itself was an absolute war that pushed both competitors to their absolute limits and beyond. The attacker came out swinging with everything they had, knowing that showing any hesitation or fear would result in immediate destruction. They targeted Fatu's ribs where the previous attack had left bruising, working over that injured area with precision strikes and submission holds designed to take away the big man's power advantage. Fatu absorbed the punishment with the kind of toughness that made him such a feared presence in the first place, and when he finally got his hands on his opponent, the beating he delivered was absolutely brutal to witness. He launched the attacker across the ring with suplexes that shook the entire structure, connected with devastating strikes that echoed through the speakers, and executed high-flying maneuvers that someone his size had no business being able to perform. The near falls kept the audience on the edge of their seats, with both competitors kicking out of moves that normally would have ended matches decisively. The referee was constantly checking on both wrestlers to make sure they were physically able to continue because the punishment being inflicted was beyond what anyone typically endures in a standard match. The attacker's face was covered in blood from a headbutt that had split their forehead open, while Fatu was visibly favoring his ribs and breathing heavily from the sustained attack on his injured midsection. Every strike seemed like it could be the last one, every pinfall attempt felt like it might be the finish, and nobody in the building or watching at home could predict how this battle would ultimately conclude. Just when it seemed like Jacob Fatu was about to put his opponent away for good with his devastating moonsault finisher, something completely unexpected happened that changed the entire complexion of the match. The lights in the arena suddenly went dark, and when they came back on seconds later, there was a mysterious figure standing on the entrance ramp watching the action in the ring with obvious interest. The distraction was enough to cause Fatu to hesitate for just a moment, and in that split second of uncertainty, the attacker capitalized with a desperation move that connected flush and left both competitors down on the canvas gasping for air. The referee began his count as neither wrestler seemed capable of getting back to their feet, the crowd counting along with increasing volume as the numbers climbed higher and higher. The finish to the match left everyone stunned and created more questions than it answered because wrestling fans know that nothing is ever truly resolved with just one contest. Aldis appeared on the entrance ramp immediately after the final bell, his expression unreadable as he surveyed the carnage in the ring and the two exhausted competitors who had just gone through absolute hell. The announcement he made set up the next chapter in this ongoing saga and guaranteed that the tension between these parties would continue to escalate in the weeks and months ahead. The mystery figure who had appeared during the match remained an unknown variable that added another layer of intrigue to an already complex situation. Make sure you subscribe to stay updated on everything happening with this explosive storyline because you know this situation is far from over and the best is yet to come.